The mud of the carriage track swallowed Eliza's boots, pulling at her like the life she was leaving behind. But she didn't feel the biting February cold. Her breath came in jagged, panicked stabs, each puff of white mist a testament to a heart hammering against her ribs. Her ears still rang with the echo of Silas's voice, a cold, cultured drawl promising he would break her to his hand before the moon set on their wedding night. The heavy silk of her gown, once a shimmering ivory, was now a tattered, gray-stained shroud. It snagged on the skeletal fingers of the brambles as she scrambled into a ditch, the thorns tearing at her skin, but she welcomed the sting. It meant she was still alive, still moving, still her own. She pressed her face into the rotting leaves to hide the pale glow of her skin from the approaching lanterns. The carriage that pulled to a halt was not Silas's black-lacquered brougham with its predatory crest. It was a massive, imposing thing of dark mahogany, the horses snorting great plumes of steam into the midnight air. A man stepped out, his tall frame cutting a terrifying silhouette against the silver moonlight. "Stay back!" Eliza shrieked, her voice cracking like dry parchment. She pressed her spine into the wet earth, her fingers clawing into the muck. Julian Thorne, the Earl of Radcliffe, stopped instantly. He didn't loom. He didn't roar. In the flickering light of the carriage lamps, he saw the purple bloom of a bruise on her jaw and the way she vibrated with a primal, bone-deep terror. He didn't reach for her. He knew better than to touch a wounded creature. He simply removed his heavy, fur-lined greatcoat and laid it on the ground halfway between them, a bridge of wool and warmth. "My name is Julian," he said, his voice like low-rolling thunder, steady and rhythmic. He kept his hands visible and empty, held away from his body. "I am going to step back to my carriage. If you wish for warmth and a locked door, the coat is yours, and the seat beside it is too. I will not look back until the door is closed." The first weeks at Radcliffe Manor were a dance of shadows and held breaths. Eliza flinched at the mere click of a latch. She bolted from the room if Julian entered a space she occupied, her skirts swishing in a frantic retreat. To her, his sprawling wealth was just a bigger, more gilded cage, and his broad-shouldered size was a weapon she was simply waiting for him to use. Julian, a man used to commanding North Sea fleets and a small army of servants, learned a new, agonizing discipline: stillness. He never summoned her to tea. He never demanded she join him for dinner. Instead, he engaged in a silent dialogue. He left books he thought she might like: botany, poetry, travelogues of places far from England, on the terrace table where she sat when she thought no one was watching. He instructed the staff to never knock on her door, but to hum softly or scuff their feet as they approached, so she would never be startled by a sudden presence. He became a ghost in his own home, to give her the space to exist. The turning point came on a night of visceral, heavy thunder that shook the manor's foundations. Eliza was found shaking in the dark corner of the library, the booming sky mimicking the sounds of Silas's heavy boots and the violence that had followed them. Julian found her there, but he didn't offer a hand or a platitude. He didn't tell her she was safe. He simply sat on the floor, 6 feet away, his back against a mahogany shelf, and began to read aloud from a dry, dusty ledger about wool exports and shipping weights. "What are you doing?" she whispered through her tears, her voice small and raw. "Giving you something boring to listen to," he replied without looking up from the columns of numbers. "The world is loud right now, Eliza. My ledgers are very quiet. Let the wool prices drown out the sky. She watched him. He was a man who could crush her with a single word of command, yet he sat on a cold, drafty floor just to be a tether for her soul. For the first time, the Earl vanished, and she saw only Julian. Months passed. The fear didn't vanish. Trauma like hers never truly leaves. But it folded itself small, like a letter tucked into a back pocket. One afternoon, Julian was hunched over his desk in the study, the golden light of autumn casting long shadows across his maps. Eliza walked in, unannounced and without a precursor of sound. She didn't stay by the door, the threshold she had treated as a boundary for months. She walked directly to his desk and placed a hand, trembling only slightly, on his shoulder. Julian froze. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic rhythm he usually kept under iron control. He didn't move, didn't breathe, waiting for her lead, as if she were the one holding the power. "You haven't asked for anything," she said, her voice gaining a resonant strength. "Not a smile, not a thank you, not a single look. You've treated me like a guest in a sanctuary." "You owe me nothing, Eliza," he said, finally looking up, his dark eyes searching hers. "Safety isn't a loan you pay back with gratitude. It's a right you were born with." She leaned down, her forehead resting against his temple. The scent of him, ink, old wood, and the faint spice of sandalwood, finally felt like home instead of a threat. "I don't stay because I am safe, Julian. I stay because I am seen." He turned slowly, taking her hand with a reverence that made her feel like the finest silk rather than broken glass. He didn't pull her into his lap or claim her space. He waited until she stepped into the circle of his arms. When he finally kissed her, it wasn't a claim. It was a question. And for the first time in her life, Eliza's answer was a resounding yes. If this story pulled you in, hit that like button, subscribe to join the journey, and share this with someone who loves a good story. Your support keeps these stories alive.